citizens of any nation.
Today, I'd like to focus our attention on matters of authority that is dealing with a lot of pain and misfortune and bad things. This is developed by King David in Psalm 69, that is a psalm calling to God to help deal with authority, his kingly authority that is overwhelmed with pain. The psalm starts with waters coming into his soul, all kinds of bad problems happening, and there seems to be a situation that he's in that has no way out. Like, he talks about sinking in deep mire when there is no standing. He is overflown with floods, and we see here a very powerfully stated connection between authority and King Saul, Saul, soul. So, what is it that we are missing in today's understanding of authority? Somehow, authority got focused primarily on business profits, on money that brings immediate results, values. I think that we have a problem in contemporary world with understanding and with reasoning about nature of authority. Understanding of authority, both within the logic and reason and heritage, but also understanding from within our hearts. So what we have today is a situation in which the authority seems to be so overwhelmed with waters, with disasters, with thunders, with brokenness, that it doesn't have any joy in it. What is the difference between authority that is not recognizing God, and King David is that he knows that his help can come from the Lord. In fact, he believes that that's the only help that he needs to resolve this situation. And what do people do today when authority becomes overwhelmed with disasters? They blame other people. So we have a situation in which hope of King David focuses on communicating with the Lord versus godless authority that ignores God and then blames other people for what is happening to it. So we have a lot of blame today, a lot of jumping into realms that would never be blamed if that disaster of godless authority turned into God to find solutions, healing, forgiveness, and direction. So we have here a leader that is wielding authority that God gave him, and he is so humble. He understands the nature, the complexity of his soul. He states here, I'm weary of my crying, my throat is dried, mine eyes fail while I'll wait for my God. So it's a story about a leader that has feelings and has sorrow and is capable of grieving over what is happening to him. So he's not blaming anyone for this, he's turning to God. And then, when he has that connection with God, then he explains his situation, that he is dealing with a lot of hatred, a lot of enemies, and they are the ones who cause him to be so overwhelmed with ruling. So we have a situation here in which any blame of others has to come by first focusing on communication with the Lord. This psalm continues, O God, thou knowest my foolishness, and my sins are not hid from thee. Let not them that wait on thee, O Lord, God of hosts, be ashamed for my sake. Let not those that seek thee be confounded for my sake, O God of Israel. So again, King David addresses God of Israel. He knows God of Israel. He comes from the house of Israel, and he knows that he has authority of God over him. He cannot just do anything he wants. So he addresses God as help, a source of help. And I think that we need to restore that in us, because if God doesn't help us in the complex situations we are living in, then there is no hope. Things only will get worse and then completely collapse. And one of the great things that we have is that we know about God of Israel. I was born in a family that took me to church a lot. The ancient cathedral that was created by Cistercian monks about 1,000 years ago in connection with the Roman Emperor in Constantinople. And the language there was Latin. So for years, as a little girl, I would just go to church and just listen to Latin. I did not understand that language, but I understood the connection of communication with God. And that's what shaped me first 5 years of my life. Later on, it was all changed. The Latin was removed. I moved to another city, and then all kinds of things happened in my life that would take me away from God. I would be in a situation of very atheistic education, And yet the foundation was so powerful that no matter what was pushed on me, I would never lose it. And I think that it's very similar to what we are dealing with in countries that have heritage of knowing God, like America, like Russia, like Germany, Poland, France, England, that we have that foundation within us, but we are dealing with all kinds of sources of authority that want to separate us from it, and then that would turn us into hopelessness. So I think that one of the things that we need to return to is hope, and that hope comes from truth of our identities, and then we should search for it. Like I had to search for it. There was a point in my life that was so hopeless that I had to return to my foundation. And that return was very powerful, though it wasn't easy to deal with this powerful, beautiful foundation of knowing God, and then with all the authorities around me that would deny it. So I understand that dichotomy of knowing God, but then dealing with people and authorities that either know God and deny it, or don't know God at all, but they want to rule us, rule me. So we have a situation today in the world of horrible wars, unnecessary wars, and the main cause of those wars, I looked at it very carefully. The main cause of this is that division of authority. The authority that those countries at war, whether it's Russia and Ukraine, Russia, Ukraine, and many other countries that decided to participate, America, Israel, and Arab countries, they are all countries that know God for thousands of years, some of them for hundreds of years, but some, like Israel, for almost 6,000 years. So we are dealing with need to restore communication with God first. And then He will lead all the leaders in those countries in the right direction. That is possible, and that is how world peace will come. It will not come because of some people deciding to end the war. It will not happen because the roots, the causes of the war are so deeply connected with identities of those countries, and also with spirits of those countries. Some of them are crushed, broken. The communication lines are pretty much non-existing. Before Ukraine and Russia got into this military conflict, they used to have communication lines developed during times of USSR. And that was a very long period, almost 70 years. So suddenly those communication models were cut off, and there was no substitute. So there is virtually no communication between Russia and Ukraine. They are communicating through other countries, which is very strange. And those other countries, they don't understand the local culture and traditions and ways, so they have good intentions, but the conflict is just becoming worse. So my recommendation would be to turn to God first. All world leaders, we all have capacity to know God, and anyone wielding authority, by definition, God's hand is there on that person's heart. So what we need to do is understanding that this is desirable, this is good, and that's where the world peace will come from God, to the leaders. Like God would help King David. By the way, Psalms are instruction songs for all leaders all over the world, because this is the way God taught a king how to be a king. So it's like a textbook for us. The best way is to read it while asking God to help with understanding, but anyone can do it, anyone in the world. You just have to recognize that this is from God of Israel, who created us, who is the creator, and he wants us to have virtuous, joyful authority in life. So what I'm saying is that tradition of knowing God in certain countries comes with thousands of years of experience, but God is immortal, eternal. So even those who don't know God can use the Psalms as a textbook to ask God to help them. And when all leaders of the world start turning to God first for virtue, for understanding, then he will guide their hearts in the right way. But if they block God, then there is no hope. Everything becomes disconnection and disaster and flooding. So in this very serious world situation, as many leaders in the world are trying to solve the situation of military conflict between Russia and Ukraine, we have to understand it's not going to be solved by militaries, because the problem is not military. Military conflict became a symptom, but the problem is the disconnection from foundations of communications that those countries developed over centuries. Ukraine was part of Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth for many centuries. They had highly developed military that was divinely guided. They knew authority of God's king. They knew how to receive direction of authority from God directly or from king. They had what was called noble democracy, so they had enormous freedom. King was there to guide them, to organize things, but they had independence, they had their own will. Russia, for a long time, was connected to it, directly or indirectly, and then it developed into Russian Empire. Russian Empire, under Catherine II primarily, became very powerful in understanding of divine authority that she brought from Germany, from Holy Roman Empire. So she helped then Russian kingdom, to really understand what it means to deal with large territories, all because God was guiding her. God was giving her direction of how to deal with the state. And sometimes people are so focused on personal lives of God's kings that they don't understand that there's this higher dimension that leads them, and that is virtue itself. So even if particular kings don't do the right thing, God's presence is there as virtue. But if that aspect of authority, of divine authority, is denied, then everything becomes sin. There's no room and space for virtue. So we have to understand that aspect of European, Russian and American heritage that focuses on God first. And then God deals with the leader's sins, with those dangerous iniquities coming from enemies of particular countries. And that's how we will receive peace for European countries, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, and Arab countries. We have to understand the foundation, the root of virtue that will come to them, and that virtue can only come from God. So as we are overwhelmed with all kinds of press conferences, meetings, desires, wills, we should really focus on learning how to communicate with the Lord on this situation, and how to receive that blessing and vision of peace from God Himself. So that's what I'm promoting, as after all of those years studying politics, God brought me back to the roots of my life, which was 100% focused on presence of God. And one of the things that we have difficulty with today is security of presence of the Lord. It creates within us a very powerful, loving connection. And that's what our ancestors knew. I'm lucky that in my family I still caught like the end of it before the younger generations who were completely cut off from it. I understand that dimension, that light, the power that comes from God's presence on the territory. So God's presence in political authority and also on the territory. And today we have those fights over territories. So I ask God to restore that in us, to restore that vision of life, connecting us to the territories we live in or we rule in a living way, so that instead of fighting over those territories, we accept God's presence of living force on those territories as a foundation of peace. And I think that that right there would be a start to resolve a lot of current conflicts connected with ownership of lands and management of lands, resources. So in some ways, what I'm asking God is very easy, because Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, all the European countries, other European countries, all countries of former Yugoslavia, Middle East, the entire Middle East, they all know God. They all know what it means to have that connection. What we all need in my generation and younger generations is actual healing of that disconnection of God's presence in the territories that for centuries or for thousands of years belonged to God. Before I came here, I was looking at the story about the great Augustus Caesar of Rome, and I realized that was the time when Jesus was born, king from God. The connection between life itself and his Father in kingdom of God. And I think that that blessing that Jesus brought on Rome at that time is what I ask God today to grant us that connection of divine beauty, divine virtue, divine life on the authority that is searching for peace and can really only find it from God Himself. So let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me, Barbara.